had a couple of requests to show you guys how I've been climbing a tree all season. I do it a little bit differently. I use a DIY saddle setup, and I kind of blended together different methods of climbing a tree without sticks. So I've come up with something that's a little bit different. I think I've actually seen somebody else do this, so I can't call it completely different. But all together, the whole system weighs about 5 pounds. So for DIY, public land, deep stuff, it's pretty much perfect, and I can climb pretty much any tree I want. Obviously, it's kind of like a climber, so the straight trees with little limbs works a lot better than a tree with a whole lot of limbs, but you can do it with a whole lot of limbs too. It just takes a lot longer. So I'm going to open this bag up, show you what's inside, and explain what this is and how it works, and show you how to climb a tree with it. This is the bottom half of the climber. All of this is the top. Again, it looks like a lot, but it all weighs about 5 pounds. It's mostly rope. So I carried this stuff in my book bag, and the rest of this in this fanny pack. So we got that unpacked. We don't need it anymore. This is a Memu rock climbing harness. And then we've got our tree tether, which this is a salt line. All of this stuff is rated for like 10 times my body weight or something ridiculous like that. There's really no way that you can snap this without cutting it. So as long as you're careful, with broadheads, knives, that kind of stuff, you don't have to worry about it. This is a sit drag. It's made for hunting off the ground. I use this with the rock climbing harness, super safe. And then this is the bottom part where my feet go, and you'll kind of see how everything works from there. I was gonna do just rope, but it was kind of digging into my feet, so I added this this scrap piece of wood. You can see it's just rope, 2 big old holes drilled in the wood there, and I've used it like this all season, and it's still solid as a rock. It's figure 8 knot, and then there's a I forget what this is. It's just an extra knot, and then there's a good bit of slack so I can adjust it for bigger size trees, but I haven't actually had to move it at all this year. So this just again, another figure 8, and that's it. So let's see how it all works on the tree. So I'm going to put this this rock climbing harness on really quick. So all I'm going to do with this, see, I've got a loop here, and then this is already finished with a loop like this. It goes like this on the tree, okay? So you just wrap this guy around the tree like so. You feed this in, and then it's just girth hitched to the tree. That's all there is to it. So this is girth hitched, and it just hangs down low like this. This is my sit drag. If you use the harness by itself without the sit drag, it's kind of uncomfortable. It bites into your legs a little bit. I don't know how rock climbers deal with it. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's definitely more comfortable with the sit drag. And then this is my tree tether. Again, just a loop up top to loop it around the tree. This is a Prusik knot with a carabiner that attaches to the bridge on my sit drag. I would definitely not recommend just using the sit drag. They definitely don't say it's okay to climb a tree with it like that. So that's where the rock climbing harness comes in. You'll see I have another loop down here. It's a figure 8 on a bite with a carabiner. I attach that to my rock climbing harness. So that way, if something goes wrong with either the Prusik, this bridge, or the sit drag itself, if I fall down, I only drop a couple inches, and then I'll get caught by the rock climbing harness. And again, this setup is not my own creation. DIY Sportsman on YouTube came up with this. I think he's the original guy that came up with this. But this is pretty much his exact setup. You can see the video. In fact, I'll actually link to it so you guys can see a more in-depth version of how to make this, because he does a pretty good job. But this is the part that I came up with myself. Again, I kind of mixed a bunch of different climbing methods like this. So I'm just going to loop this around here, feed all of this rope through here. Now, I don't I don't typically climb with a lineman's belt. You probably should, but I've never really felt the need. This is pretty. It feels pretty safe as it is. The only time you need a lineman's belt is if you're gonna climb a tree with a whole bunch of limbs. So that way you can unhook, go above the limb, but you have to use a lineman's belt throughout that process so you can unhook this safely. You don't want to be holding onto the tree with your feet in here and unhooking anything. That's just a bad recipe for disaster. So that's where the lineman's belt comes in. This tree doesn't have any limbs, it's naked, so we're just going to climb straight up at no problems. You can use this climbing method with any tree saddle at all. I'm too poor to have a really nice tree saddle like a tethered system or a Mantis. I'm a little redundant, so you'll see a lot of extra rope here. That's because I go through the rock climbing harness and do another figure 8. You can see the sit drag is carrying most of my weight, and then all you got to do is step into this piece of wood here, just like that, and you can actually use this as your platform, which works out pretty cool. But all you do is take this. I typically loosen up this Prusik a little bit, just ride it up the tree, get it pretty high, get it tight again, raise this Prusik, lean back, yep, good to go. And then you just do it with the bottom. All right. All right, so there you can kind of see. I'm not going to go much higher just because it's getting dark on me. But I could go all the way up this tree if I wanted to. I think the highest I've gone was about 35 feet. And I actually hunt just like this. I don't use any other type of platform or anything to keep it even lighter. I've sat like this all day long, and I've done it in rain, heavy winds, all kinds of crazy stuff. It's a pretty sweet setup. It's pretty quiet, it's pretty light. It's actually the lightest tree climbing setup I've ever heard of, so it doesn't really get much better than this. The only downside is that it does take a little while to get used to. This is pretty much it. And again, if there was a limb here, you would just attach a lineman's belt, stand up, unhook all of this, which again is kind of a hassle, but I'll show you how to get down. It's actually, I mean, it's just as easy. You just drop it down, make sure it stays on your butt. I'm gonna modify that a little bit too, probably in the off season, which DIY Sportsman talks about how he modified his so it would stay attached to his rock climbing harness. So I'm going to do that this off season so it doesn't slide down like it's doing right now. Even if you fall backwards from the sit drag, you can't really fall out of this this rock climbing harness as long as it's above your hip bones. So it's a pretty rock solid, pretty safe setup. If you see, I do put my feet on the tree. That gets a little bit more challenging when it's wet, but it's still not a big deal. I've hunted, especially this season, a ton in the rain, so it's a pretty versatile setup. I know there's a lot of guys that hunt a lot of public and stuff, and it doesn't really get much better than this.